Hello, welcome to Raymond Castile's Basement of Horror. Today we're going to look at the new plastic zombie toys Lincoln-style Wolfman action figure. The glow-in-the-dark version and the non-glow version. And we're also going to take this opportunity to talk in general about castaway toys and plastic zombie toys. Part of this will be an interview with David Lee, one of the two people who run Castaway Toys and Plastic Zombie Toys. So first, let me show you what we're going to be talking about. Okay. Over there. So here is the glow-in-the-dark Wolfman. Here's the non-glow Wolfman. Let's take a look here at the glow-in-the-dark Wolfman. And I will be taking one of these out of the package. There's the glow-in-the-dark Wolfman. And here is the non-glow Wolfman. There's the card. So these they're in bags with these header cards, and they have little stickers on them. Let me read what the card says. Creepy Classics, fully posable 8-inch action figure. The Wiley Wolf-Man. Plastic Zombie Toys is a registered trademark. It just says it's a registered trademark. All rights reserved. Adult collectible, recommended ages 15 and up. Plastic Zombie Toys. Aha. Okay. What does it say on the back? Harkening back to the knockoff toys sold in the 60s and 70s, Plastic Zombie Toys proudly presents our creepy classic line of 8-inch action figures. Our dime store creations are reminiscent of classic action figures made by Lincoln, Ahai, Remco, and Tomland. Every one of our products is packed full of nostalgia, quality, and improved articulation. Let's relive our childhoods together with our take on classic monsters. Stay tuned for more exciting toys to come. If you've got the brains, we got the guts. All right, so we'll be talking more about those shortly. Oh, that's interesting. I thought I would have to... Am I going to have to... Let me see here. I didn't think these bags were resealable, but they might be. Now you've got to undo these staples, which we'll do. We're going to take this one out. Let's see what the sticker says. It's just a skull and crossbones design. Can't see any writing on it. I don't think it has any writing. It's just skull and crossbones. One more look at this. That's a nice illustration of this glowing Lincoln Wolfman. All right, so like I said, we're going to have an interview in a moment with David Lee. So let me talk about Plastic Zombie Toys. It might get a little confusing when I say Plastic Zombie Castaway, so let me go over this. The name of the company is actually Castaway Toys. Cast-A-Way, Castaway Toys. And it was started by David Lee and Jason Schiermeyer. David Lee, who you're going to see in a moment, and his partner, Jason Schiermeyer. I don't think they have an official date when the company was founded, but in an interview they said it was 2004 or 2005. So that was as specific as they could be with when this company started. But I think they were actually making stuff in the late 90s, but the company didn't form in a kind of formal way. They didn't launch the company as a company until 2004, 2005. But I think they were involved, perhaps in a more informal way, some years prior to that, making custom toys. They started with generic cowboys and pirates, and their first major offering was a line called Monsters of Legend. And the Monsters of Legend was inspired by the Tom Land famous Monsters of Legend series. The Monsters of Legend included a shock monster type zombie, Mr. Hyde, the Fly, Phantom of the Opera, a Hunchback, and other characters in different variants of those characters. And then they went on to make 8-inch Mego-style versions of Captain Action. And they relaunched the Mego Action Jackson line. Now, Action Jackson was a figure made in the early 70s by Mego, but Castaway Toys now has the trademark on Action Jackson. So they are making official Action Jackson action figures. And they still make them from time to time. As you'll see in the interview, David Lee talks about that. They straddle the line between a custom toy maker and a legit toy manufacturer. Because on one hand, they do cast stuff at home out of resin. That's part of the reason they're called castaway toys. It's, among other things, a reference to casting resin parts. But they also order parts from China. So they'll have factories in China make heads and hands and feet and bodies and accessories. So they do both. They make things in a more artisanal kind of handmade way in their homes. And they make things in factories in China and order large quantities and have them shipped to the US. I think generally they have the parts shipped from China and then they assemble them themselves and do the packaging, put that together themselves. So let's take a look at a few things here. First of all, here's one of, well, I should say, I'm talking about castaway toys. Like, wait a minute, I thought they were called plastic zombie toys. Like I said, it could get confusing. So plastic zombie toys, which connects to what we're going to see here, it's the name they use for a certain line of monster toys. So plastic zombie toys, and it wasn't always like that, but going forward, they're going to use plastic zombie toys as their name for these kinds of monster figures. But in the past, everything was under the Castaway Toys banner, as you're going to see here. So this is one of the first things they ever made. This is their Shock Monster style zombie. And this is where the plastic zombie name comes from, because they've made some version of this throughout the history of the company. They keep remaking this figure in one form or another, some version of this figure. And even this line, this new line with the Wolfman, that the Wolfman come from, that line's also going to have a version of this toy. So they've never walked away from this little shock monster creature. So here is one of the very first Castaway Toys creations. That is the zombie. That is the shock monster. See, he has blue hair like a shock monster mask from the, I guess 1970 on. Topstone gave the shock monster blue hair. He had black hair before that. But it's a really good rendition, 8-inch Mego-style rendition of a shock monster. Particularly when you look at it from the angle like that, that's really good. I have to wonder, well, actually I think they said they had a skull head, and then they sculpted this over the skull, which is how Keith Ward sculpted the original Shock Monster. He sculpted a skull first and then did the zombie over it. But, I mean, it almost looks like they had a reference, like maybe a VXX effects mask or something as a reference when they did this, because it really looks spot on. He's got a broken wrist, unfortunately, and I do have a replacement for that. They sent me a replacement hand, but I don't really have the skill to replace that. I mean, I'm afraid I'll break it. So one of these days, I'll have someone else who knows what they're doing pull these out and replace the hands. But I do have a replacement, an authentic replacement hand for that. And he came with a brain. I think this glows in the dark. I don't know if he has a brain in his head, but he has a brain accessory, because, you know, from Return of the Living Dead, zombies eat brains. So give him a little brain to munch on. Now, let me see if this character has an official name. No, it just is the zombie. Oh god, this card is dusty. The blister clamshell is dusty. So there's what that original card looks like. You see the original Castaway Toys logo. I think they've gone through 3 versions of that. It's pretty decent artwork of that zombie kind of reaching out of the nothingness back there, reaching for you. I like that. And you can see some of the other characters that they made at the time on the side there. And there's nothing on the back. I like that zombie artwork, the Shock Monster artwork. You know, some of the other ones, kind of runs hot and cold. Featuring super glow action. Okay. Now, what does this say up here? Corey Woods? Corey Woods, Monsters of Legend. So I don't know, is the zombie. I don't know what the story is with Corey Woods, who that is, or what his connection is to this. I know the 2 people, David Lee and Jason Schiermeyer. But I know there are other people, because they've talked about other sculptors and other people who were involved over the years. So it could have been someone who was involved in the early days who's not involved now. So let's put this little guy back. I would like to get that hand fixed, but I'm not going to ruin it trying to fix it myself. But I do have the genuine replacement hand for someday when I feel like trying, when I find someone else to do it. I'm not going to do it. Well, this is nice. It's not. It's his head. There we go. Whew, there he is. He's in there. Okay. Now, here is another. Like I said, they keep doing different versions of this thing. And they even did a 3 3/4 inch version. So this is that same Shock Monster zombie character, but this is a 3 3/4 inch version. Okay. So, Night of the Living 80s Zombie Shock Monster. There it is. Night of the Living 80s Zombie Shock Monster. And there is the little Shock Monster. He's cute. And there's the Keith Ward illustration. Actually, that looks like Jim Warren's recreation of Keith Ward's illustration, because Jim Warren, publisher of Famous Monsters, he redrew those Keith Ward illustrations for the magazine. He didn't use them just as they were in the catalogs. He redrew them. I had the pleasure of interviewing Jim Warren at some length a few years ago. We talked all about Keith Ward. He knew Keith Ward well. He really saw Keith Ward as a business partner. He was not just, some guy who ordered stuff from. He knew him well. So I know that the story. I don't think it's not in the interview I had with David Lee coming up, but from another interview, I believe this is Amigo, either Bo or Luke Duke, Dukes of Hazzard action figure body, and that he got some kind of a bulk quantity of those. I don't know if it was from one of the China contacts, a factory in China, or if they got it from some other source, but they got a bulk quantity of either Bo or Luke Duke little Mego figures from the Dukes of Hazzard, and they converted those into these shock monsters. And it says Night of the Living 80s, but there's nothing really 80s about the shock monster. He was introduced in 1956, as best we know, and the heyday of that mask was the 60s and 70s. Like late 50s to early 70s, mid 70s. So it's not really an 80s character, but whatever, it's cute, and I like the hot pink 80s color. As far as I know, this is the only Night of the Living 80s figure they made. They just made this shock, and that's it. I don't know if they were planning a line, like with Mr. Hyde, Hunchback, and all the figures they had done in 8 inches, but they only made this one. It's a really cute figure. Oh, hold on here. So, as I said, Castaway Toys made a lot of interesting action figures, and not resin, but actually factory-produced, manufactured action figures. And they did, old serial-style Flash Gordon. They also had a hand in Biff Bang Pow's movie, Dino De Laurentiis movie-style Flash Gordon figures. And I don't know what the arrangement was there, but they had a hand in that. And but they also made the old-fashioned serial-style Flash Gordon figure. And they made a lot of generic figures. They made a skeletal figure called the Deal Maker, who's very cool, kind of like a New Orleans sort of a voodoo gambling kind of original character. I don't think he's based on anything. He was pretty cool. They've made a lot of different characters, some original, some based on movies and other characters. And they've done licensing, like Flash Gordon stuff was licensed. They did the Phantom superhero. I hope I mentioned that a minute ago. The King Features Syndicate Phantom, the superhero. They did a whole line of Phantom action figures, and those were licensed. They were working with the company that owns that character to do all different variations and get original artwork direct from the company. Official artwork of the character from their archives. So they've done a lot of interesting stuff. And now they've done these. This is their latest thing, the most recent thing they've done. So I should say that I was given these two figures for the purpose of reviewing them. So I do not have to give these back. I didn't pay money for them. They gave them to me as review samples. So I think that means on this video I have to check that I received something in return for making the video. But I'm not getting paid or anything like that. They sent me these samples they gave me in person these samples to review. And I will review them. Let's see, a couple more little bits before we get to the interview. So as I said, this is based on Lincoln Wolf-Man, mid-1970s line of action figures made by a New Zealand-based company called Lincoln International. And this is an original Lincoln Wolf-Man, which I've shown on this program before. So there is an original Lincoln International Wolfman. I kind of garbled that up. A Lincoln International Wolfman. There we go. It's such an amazing toy that I'm tongue-tied speaking about it. So that is what the real thing looks like. And later when I get this out of the package, I'll hold them next to each other. But that's a real one. A vintage one on a real card. This card has been resealed, I should say. So it's not a sealed card, it's a resealed card. But it is an original vintage card, original vintage action figure. So that's what a real Lincoln Wolf-Man looks like. And we'll compare them a little more in a little bit. So, since I'm not going to open this one, I'll review this as a packaged one. So let's take one more look at this. The Wiley Wolf-Man. Lincoln never made glow-in-the-dark action figures. Mego did, Remco did, Lincoln did not. So this figure has never existed before. This glow-in-the-dark Lincoln Wolf-Man has never existed before. This is the first time. You notice he doesn't have a rope around his waist. All right, so we'll come back to these. I think this is a good time to go to the interview. And while we're watching the interview, I will open this up. I'm going to open a toy, well, for review purposes. I met up with David Lee recently at the Toyman Toy Show at Machinist Hall in Bridgeton, Missouri. That's in the St. Louis area. It's a show held several times a year. I think it's 8 times a year. I could be wrong. I think it's 8 times a year. So it's held quite frequently, actually. And it's been going strong since 1990, I think. 1990. And I profiled the show, the toy show, in my 1995 documentary, In Love with Toys. So if you watch In Love with Toys, you'll see a vintage view of that toy show. And on the previous episode of Basement of Horror, I visited that show and I did 40 minutes just touring the toy show, looking at everything on the dealer tables and showing you all the different variety of toys that were for sale. And I interviewed some of the dealers at their tables, including David Lee. And that's where this interview was recorded. It's different from the one you saw in the toy show episode. This one's just for the purposes of this episode. Talking to David Lee of Castaway and Plastic Zombie Toys about his company and making these nostalgic Lincoln-style Wolfman figures. Why is he doing it? What is this all about? Talking a little bit about his company and his plans for the future. So here is that interview with David Lee. This is David Lee from Plastic Zombie Toys. He has set up here at the Machinist Hall Toy Show, and he has some toys that I'm going to review on my show, but he can tell you more about them.
Hi. So again, as Ray said, my name is David Lee. Me and my partner, Jason Schiermeyer, you might know us as Castaway Toys for years, but we started a new venture under Plastic Zombie Toys, and our first figure that we've put out is a replica of the Lincoln Wolf-Man, but a little modernized flavor, and Ray has graciously agreed to review these, and we're super excited about that. So I think that this is going to be, if sales are any indication, we started on Halloween taking orders on www.plasticzombietoys.com, and it's been humbling the amount of people who have expressed interest and bought figures, and we're just super excited, and having somebody of Ray's stature checking out our figures, it's pretty exciting. So
let's see it. Let's see one.
Yeah. I don't want to mess them up, Ray. These are your figures. So I think you're going to be excited. We kind of went with more of a retro, what'd you call it? Like kind of a UK bootleg?
Yeah, UK bootleg.
Feel to the packaging, right? And so you've got the non-glow version and the glow version. Now, Lincoln never made a glow version. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So that was kind of Jason's idea was, hey, you know, most folks, if they have a Lincoln, they probably don't have one that glows in the dark.
No, if they do, it's not real.
Right. So now you've got the flavor of the Lincoln, but you also have, you know, something that's a little updated and different. And we think Ray will like them, and we hope he gives us a good review, and hope he gives an honest review. And we're excited. We're just excited to get them out there.
Good idea.
Tell us about the process of making these. How did you produce these?
So these are made in China. I did a Kickstarter about 10 years ago to develop a bandless body that looks like the original Mego body called the Type S body. And so we've been producing that in China for about 15 years. Well, no, so I take that back. Maybe 10 years?
Several years.
Yeah, it's been a while. But so we had the bodies made, and we already had the buck, if you will, the basis. And so Jason and I said, hey, we like these kind of figures. We're going to go out on a limb and see what we can do and make some cool toys, right? Our mission statement on the website is pretty simple. It says, make cool toys because we like to do it and sell it to people who want to buy them. And that's really what we're about. Not trying to be a big company, we just want to do the things that we think are cool.
And why? Well, tell me. So these heads are not exactly like Lincoln heads. Tell me, how are they different, and why are they different?
Okay, so we wanted to make them as close as possible, but we also have a respect for longtime collectors. It doesn't do us any good if folks are unhappy with a replica that might devalue their valuable collectibles. So the first difference, we sent the original head to China, but the first difference is they're not squishy blow molded heads. They're solid with a post in the middle, so they're injection molded and painted in China to look very similar, but they also wouldn't fool a long-time collector if they picked it up in the wild and somebody couldn't pass it off as an original. That was very important to us. Secondly, we updated the hands and feet to give them a little different flavor, right? We're going to modernize this thing with a new body. We might as well upgrade some things and make them, cool. And then the third thing was Lincoln never made a glow-in-the-dark Wolfman, and so glow-in-the-dark is a very 70s kind of phenomenon for these kind of figures, so we wanted to make sure that we captured some of that flavor. And even if you don't have a Lincoln, right, you could get a very good facsimile. But even if you had a Lincoln, now you can have something that's a little different in your collection, right? So it kind of expands both avenues for collectors.
What did you do for a living when you work?
Can you tell me a little bit about the history? Go into more, like, I think when we were doing our interview, you talked a little more about the past. Tell me more about the things you've made.
Okay, so
you don't have to hold those up.
Okay, so we were Castaway Toys for many years. We started off as Castaway Toys in 2004, and we put out some early monsters. You talked about those earlier, the zombie, and we had a zombie and a Phantom of the Opera guy, kind of a Mr. Hyde figure.
Yeah.
Yep, Jekyll and Hyde figure, and a zombie, shock monster. And that shock monster actually was sculpted by a UK sculptor named Corey Wood, and we have loved that sculpt for years. And it actually became the logo for our new company, Plastic Zombie Toys. That's old Undead Fred, and he's the mascot, if you will, or logo for our new venture as Plastic Zombie Toys. But going back to Castaway Toys, we wanted to make toys for years, and the name came about because we were riding back from St. Louis, and my wife said, "Well, what's the name of your company?" And I said, "We don't have a name yet." And she said, "Well, what do you do?" I said, "Well, we get in Jason's basement and we cast toys. And that's really the only way we could make these things." She said, "Well, there's your name, Castaway." And so we kind of adopted that theme of a castaway, a guy on an island, and the idea that these toys are reminiscent of things that you would have had in the past that maybe got cast away by your mom in a garage sale. And then we were very fortunate enough to get the license to produce the Phantom from
superhero.
King yes, sir, from King Features. And we also did a 8-inch version of Captain Action, another 60s property. And we did various monsters through the years on our own body.
Did you do something with Action Jackson?
So Action Jackson is my trademark. I got the trademark for Action Jackson about 6 or 7 years ago, and I've been producing Action Jackson figures in small batches to keep my trademark alive. But we're also going to start mass producing those as with these figures, and they'll be available on CastawayToys.com. So CastawayToys.com and PlasticZombieToys.com. We're partners, but we're separate. So Action Jackson's under the Castaway Toys banner, and then the monsters will be under the Plastic Zombie Toys banner.
Did you make anything with Flash Gordon?
We did. So we made a 12-inch Flash Gordon. We were lucky enough to kind of salvage a 12-inch Flash Gordon that was going to be produced by Go Hero Toys.
Yeah.
And so that's a kind of a long story, but we were able to get that out, and it was a beautiful figure. And Steve Ford is the guy who was really behind that, and we were lucky enough to get it out. But he's the true master and the true creator of an unbelievable figure. We were just lucky enough to be able to get it to market. So it's been exciting. And back to Plastic Zombie Toys, we also have a 3 3/4-inch line called Little Creeps, and it'll be based on a lot of our 8-inch figures, but down in a 5-point figure, so more reminiscent of the Kenner Star Wars kind of flavor. And we're going to have those. We're going to do a Kickstarter on those coming up fairly soon. But the sales of the Wolfman have kept us busy pretty good, and I think the Mummy's going to keep us probably just as busy. So it's a labor of love. We're excited. The people are excited to get the figures, and I think they're going to be received really well.
I know we talked about it in your interview. I don't think we talked in this about the other characters, did we?
Oh, no. So the next character up is a mummy that was sculpted by Ryan Shaw, and you can see all of these things at our Facebook page called Plastic Zombie Toys on Facebook, and you can see all of those upcoming sculpts and the things that we've got in production. We've got the molds all for the heads. The bodies stay the same, so it really is just producing new figures as these sell. So right now we have the Lincoln Wolf-Man in the glow and non-glow version, and then we're going to have the Mummy that I just spoke about in a glow version. Not sure about a non-glow version version yet. And then we have plans for Dracula and Frankenstein, intermixed with some of our original characters, the Bog Monster and Undead Fred.
Don't forget.
These characters you're going to make, tell me a little bit more about these characters. Are they all Lincoln characters?
No, so we wanted to capture that flavor, right? We love those knockoffs of the 70s that aren't your big toy companies like Azrak Hamway and Tomlin and Lincoln. And so we've got the Lincoln Wolf-Man, and we're going to have the A-High Dracula, and then we're going to have the Tomlin Frankenstein, and we're going to intermix that with our own original characters that have that same kind of idea, right, that you could have seen maybe in a shop in the 70s or 60s, right, that had that monster flavor. So we got a Bog Monster, and we've got our mascot, Undead Fred, who's kind of a takeoff on the zombie shock monster mask that was put out in the 60s and 70s. So that's what we've got in our initial lineup coming up. But we've got plans for way more than that. If these things are successful, we plan to make way more figures than that.
And you've got some other stuff.
Sure, yeah. So I'm actually opening a shop in Kansas City called Castaway Toys and Collectibles, and so I'll be carrying modern figures as well as vintage figures and our own plastic zombie toys figures and anything cool and collectible that I can come up with to put in that shop. It's going to be a kind of a destination shop there in Kansas City, and I'm excited. I've got some other vendors interested in displaying their stuff, and yeah, it's going to be a wild ride. We're going to see how it goes.
Thank you very much, David Lee, for granting me that interview and for giving me these samples to review. I have opened the non-glow version of the Wiley Wolf-Man, and there is a difference between these header cards. This one has a full moon in the corner, the non-glow version, and the glow version has that Aurora-style glow-in-the-dark logo in the corner. Now this border, see the border around that image? That is inspired by the 1970s monster coloring book from which Tomland took the illustrations. I guess they kind of stole the illustrations that they used for their famous Monsters of Legend card art. So and I've had that book on this show before. In many pictures in that book, there are borders, ornate borders, and this border around that image, that border is inspired by some of the borders around the art in that coloring book. I don't know if it's a direct lift from a specific one or if it's just inspired by them. It has kind of a Art Deco look. I like that it's called the Wiley Wolf-Man, kind of harkening back to Mego with the human Wolfman, the dreadful Dracula, the horrible mummy, the monster Frankenstein, giving them some kind of a descriptor in their name, the Wiley Wolf-Man. And he does look kind of wily. I mean, the Lincoln Wolf-Man doesn't look ferocious. He looks kind of like a hippie, or I don't know. He looks very human, and he looks like he's smiling and kind of having a good time. He doesn't look ferocious, but I always thought that made him creepy, that made him scarier. And I wish I still had a sense of smell, so I could see if this had a nice plastic smell, but I don't have a sense of smell anymore, so I can't tell. It's a heavy toy. It's got a lot of weight. Very solid. I remember the Migos and certainly the A-Highs and Lincolns and Tomlins are very, very light. I mean, if you could practically blow on them and make them float. They're so light. But this has quite a bit of weight. Let's see here. And this is a bandless body, so it doesn't have elastic or rubber bands inside of it. And Castaway Toys was an innovator in creating Mego-style bandless bodies. They were also an innovator in clamshell packaging. That was not the norm for action figures before Castaway Toys did that. And in an interview, they said that they were the first to come up with this clamshell packaging. So I don't have any way to verify that. I'll take them at their word for it. But certainly they were the innovator in the action figure market in terms of packaging stuff that way in a clamshell that could be opened and closed. Now, McFarlane, I remember, did some clamshell type packages in the 90s, but they were sealed shut. You couldn't open those. You'd have to cut them open. But anyway, so let's look at this. Now he's out of his prison. And there is some color variation between these. I saw someone else online that had a lighter colored version of this. Not dramatically lighter, but somewhat lighter. And unlike the other one, you see he's brown all over. Doesn't have any glow parts. The costume is very reminiscent of a 1970s Lincoln or Azrak Henway Wolfman figure, or Remco. They all had that same style costume, almost looks like pajamas. And of course, Lon Chaney Jr. never wore an outfit like that in any movie. Nor did Oliver Reed in the Hammer werewolf movie. And I don't really know of any prominent werewolf character in cinema that wore an outfit like that. But I think it was Azrak Henway that did it first. And their figure was based on the Aurora Wolfman model kit, which did not wear an outfit like that. So I don't know where they got that idea from. They were really originating that look in an action figure, that kind of like pajamas, brown pajamas. And then Lincoln copied Azrak Henway. And then Remco, which is owned by Azrak Henway International, it's another name that they did business under. Remco did a Wolfman figure a few years later, a licensed Universal Wolfman that had that same brown pajamas kind of outfit. I don't know if anyone else has done that style costume until now, really. I mean, maybe I'm forgetting something, but I can't think of another Wolfman action figure, a manufactured one, that had an outfit like this. And this is a manufactured toy. This is not a custom toy. So here's this back, if you want to see that. Might as well. I'm not sure if the focus is, I think the focus is going in and out here. So his head does not squeeze it. It's solid. And David in the interview talked about how the head is made. I'm not going to try to take it off and find out more. Let's try moving him around. I imagine if you moved him a lot, the joints would loosen up. But he's very fluid, fairly tight, as you would expect a new toy to be. His pants kind of restrict his movement a little bit in his legs. So this is interesting that he I don't know if he can do the splits because of the pants that probably restrict him, but his legs will go outward like that and hold that pose. They will hold that pose. His pants are very tight, so you can't, that restricts his movement somewhat. There again, so a lot of Mego type toys wouldn't necessarily hold that pose in the legs because the legs are held on with bands. Maybe when they're brand new, but before long, they wouldn't be. Like my vintage Megos that I had from childhood, their legs won't, if you pull their leg up, it'll fall back down. Let's see here. I'm a little, I don't want to break him. Does he have any? No, I don't think his knees don't swivel, but his feet do. So his feet do swivel. So they'll move like that. And they swivel out like that. Does he have any? Now let's see what he. So this is good. He can hold his arms out like that, and they don't flop down. Now I don't think contemporary Megos can do this pose right here. I don't think they can. Now vintage Megos, forget it. No way. They can't. They cannot hold their arms out like this. I don't think contemporary Megos can do this either. That's a nice pose. I don't know that it's really in character for the Wolfman to do that, but it's a cool pose. More like a Dracula pose. But I understand Mego is going to come out with their own bandless bodies at some point. They've been promising it for a while. I guess COVID probably got in the way. But I kind of miss that with Mego. I'd kind of like Mego to stay with Mego bodies. I don't know. It's kind of the nostalgic appeal of Megos that they're made pretty much the same way that they always were. Now these hands swivel, but I'm a little worried about trying to make the hand go like this because I don't know if it's able to. I don't know if that joint's able to do that. No, it's not. Well, that's interesting. Okay. So this hand will move like that, but it will not move in. You can't bend it in or out. It only moves like that. So it won't go like that. It only goes like this. Apparently, I mean, maybe I'm just not using enough force, but I'm afraid I'll break it. It doesn't look like it would move like this. I don't want to break it. There's a little, it wiggles a little bit, but it doesn't have a joint that goes like this. And of course a Mego does, but a Lincoln sure doesn't. A Lincoln only moves like that. Lincoln does not move like that. Azrak Hamway, they had one variant of their action figures because they kept changing them all the time. And there was one style that did have a joint in the wrist. I don't know if that joint can move like that. I think it only moves like this, but I'm not sure. I've never tried to move one. But most of the Azrak Hamway monsters they either don't have any, actually they don't have any, most of them have no wrist joint at all. The jointed wrist variants, they have a joint. Someone can correct me, I don't think they move like that. I think they only move like this, but I could be wrong about that. I've never had a loose one. I've had some carded jointed wrist Ahai monsters, but I've never had a loose one to fiddle around with it. Tomland for sure only moves like that. Remco, they have the monster hugging action, so there is no joint at the wrist. It's just like this mechanism in the arm to do this, but the hands don't move at all. I mean, the wrists don't move at all. They're connected to this mechanism. Migos, of course, old and new, move like that and like that. You can move them all over. So that's interesting that this can't do that. I'm a little surprised by that. Now, old Migo ankle joints, I want to say they only move like this. I don't think they move like that. I have some vintage Migos in the other room. I'm not going to get them. I'm pretty sure they only move, the ankles only move like that. They don't move like that. Could be wrong. Now, Azrak Hemway and their ankle joints only move like this. Lincoln only moves like this. Tomland like this, never like that. Same thing with Remco. All of those monsters from the 70s, early 80s, their ankle only moves up and down. They don't move side to side. So, and I think Migo is the same way. So that's an innovation that these ankles, it's limited. They don't move a lot. Well, you know, I'm looking at them. Okay, so here's the deal. I don't think they're jointed to move that way. I think they just wiggle. I'm not sure that, let me see this. I'm not sure there's a two-way joint there. I think they're just, let me see. You know, I think it's just that it's interesting because the leg joints have little knot. The ankle, the part that's attached to the leg is like a little notch in it. So I think it's just that they're like a ball and socket joint. They do hold the pose when you move them up and down. But it's very unusual. They're not, it's not like a pin going through it, that kind of a joint that's like moving like this. So that's different. But you can't get that kind of motion out of the wrists. So I've been going on and on about the ankles on the wrists. Let's see if it stands on its own. Well, yeah, but the ankle joints are kind of a weak spot. Probably because I've been wiggling them so much. That is something to note. Okay, so yeah, the ankles move, but you got to be very careful. The ankles are a weak point. It doesn't stand up very well because of the way the ankle's designed. So that's something to note. And these wrists and ankles, they have like a little disc between the hand and the arm, the foot and the leg. There's like a little disc as part of the joint. So let's look at that. You see that little brown disc right there? You see that notch I'm talking about? And you can see how that disc goes in. There's like a little disc between the foot and the leg. Now, some photos, that disc bothered me a little bit. Seeing it in person, it doesn't really bother me. Yeah, I mean, it blends in with the leg perfectly well. It's not a problem. Some of the photos, it looked a little robotic. Seeing that disc there. So it's interesting. The feet, they hold a pose when you. I don't know if they're supposed to move like this or not. Maybe I'm doing something I'm not supposed to do, but they hold that pose when you move them up. They hold it when you move it down. But they that makes it kind of weak standing the figure up on its own. Let's see, let's undo this snap. I'm just curious. I'm not taking all his clothes off. I just want to see more about how he's made. So, got some toy porn here, taking his pants down. Okay, so that's a better view of how the body's made. You can see the waist, the waist joint. And does this waist stretch? No. So on Amigo, you could stretch that because there are bands connecting the legs to the arms and connecting the two parts of the torso together, but not in this body. I don't know what that joint looks like inside of there, but it's fastened solid. You can't stretch it apart. Trying to button his shirt again. Here we go. Just to present him in his best possible light. Okay. So, the costume is very nice. And I don't get the feeling that this costume would bleed dye onto the figure. I mean, I have no way of predicting the future, but I don't see any sign of that. So I don't imagine this costume would ever bleed dye onto that plastic. It might, but I don't see any sign of that happening now. And that is a problem with contemporary Mego figures. A lot of them, the dye in the fabric bleeds onto the plastic, the body, the toy body, and if it has like white clothing under black, like a black jacket and a white shirt or something like that, different colors, the fabric will stain the white fabric. So that's an issue with Mego figures. I think it's an issue with other toys as well, but it's been noticed, especially with Mego figures, that they're using a dye that isn't color fast, and they're not washing the fabric after it's dyed. They really should dye it, wash it, and then use it for the toy. And that would cut down on some of that bleeding, of that color bleeding, leaching, staining the other fabric and the plastic of the toy. So I can't guarantee that wouldn't happen here, but it's not happening yet. But with a lot of Mego figures, you can even see, like on the card, looking at them, the bleeding already happening. So let me just see a little bit more with the posability here. You know, I'm not a big I'm not obsessed with posability. I know a lot of collectors are. That's kind of the culture of action figure collecting today. Stresses posability and how many points of articulation. I don't care. Maybe if, even if I wasn't a mint and box collector, I wouldn't care. I want some posability, yes. I don't want a statue, but I don't care if it's got 5 points or 21 points or whatever. Just give me some articulation and I'm happy. Because I think some collectors get real fussy about how many points of articulation and how many different ways can it move. And blah, blah, blah. There's it's a mentality I don't share. I think it's coming from a different place that I'm coming from. But you can see he's got he's quite posable. And he's easily posed, but his outfit does restrict him somewhat. And I'm in the process of I'm trying to move his hands like this. I'm remembering, no, they don't do that. Hear that? Ah, there we go. That's me trying to move his head. His head's very tight. And his head doesn't move like this. It's just like that. Okay, so here's more, here he is in a more Wolfman-like position. He kind of looks like George Lucas, doesn't he? Well, when I created Star Wars, there was nothing else like that around, and I was playing on the beach one day, and I just thought of Flash Gordon. Wouldn't it be nice to... Yeah, he kind of looked like George Lucas. Let's see. What else can we say about this? It's interesting that his body is a lighter shade of brown than his hands and feet and his head. His head, his hands, his feet are all consistently dark brown. His body is more of like a caramel brown. So it might have been nice to make his body a little darker or make his head, hands, feet a little lighter. Let's see. Talk about his sculpt. So apparently they scanned. So his neck also has one of those discs. I guess the bandless body, that's one of the things that's based on the movement. I guess all these joints have discs like that because the neck has a little disc right there. So the head is scanned like a 3D scanner, I guess. It's scanned from a vintage Lincoln Wolfman. It looks like a vintage Lincoln Wolfman for sure. You know, if it were painted differently, it could fool me. If it were made in a squishy material and painted in a more authentic way, it could fool me. So since I'm talking about his face, let me just show you his face one more time. Okay, and we'll compare to a vintage one in a second. Let me just take another look at this glow one, which I'm going to leave in his package. So I'm not taking him out. Now I prefer the glow one. I think it looks better. I think everything works, everything clicks. The white glow in the dark hands and feet and the white face, it all kind of, it seems more put together. Maybe because it's different than the vintage one, so it offers something new. And maybe because we just don't see action figures that look like this very often anymore. So it's more nostalgic to see it this way. But definitely I prefer the glow one. He looks cool. I like the way he looks. And he looks more like a vintage toy. He pops more as a vintage toy. I like the way like the red mouth and white teeth and just everything has a kind of vintage paint scheme. Now the packaging. I like this artwork of the Wiley Wolf-Man portrait. He has red hair though, and the figure doesn't have red hair. You know, they had a prototype image that had red hair. And this portrait has green skin. And I swear I saw, yeah, they had a prototype head that looked just like that. Red hair, green skin. And whether they're going to put that out at some point, I don't know. But I think I might have preferred like the non-glow one to be like that, red hair and green skin, just because it's different. It's not like the old Wolfman. It would put an original spin on it. And you know, the card art looks like that, so why not make it look like the card art? So I like the portrait on the card art. So much card art, for sure in the custom toy world. A lot of that card art is just not up to the same level as the toy. And even in the professional toy world with Mego, their weakest link is the card art. Mego has a real problem with the quality of the card art and the card design. So it's nice to see a professional looking design on this little card, especially since it's such a small little thing. You would think they wouldn't have to put too much work into it, but they did. So the portrait of the Wolfman is professional, looks good. Just everything, nothing looks homemade. It's all professionally designed, professionally, the illustration is professional quality, everything. They didn't take clip art or something from, or if they did, it's not obvious. It just looks professional. I appreciate that. One of the reasons I harp on packaging is because I'm a mint in package collector. I don't take things out of the package. So the package for me is part of the toy. So I don't know if this packaging is as collector friendly as it could be, because you have to take the card apart to access the toy. The bag does have a resealable opening, but the card is stapled to it and you can't open it unless you take the card out. They could have put the opening on the bottom so you could take it out that way, but over time the sticky part loses its grip and it would start just coming loose and the toy would fall out. So I can understand why they didn't do that. But just generally, it's not my favorite packaging. I would prefer a card, particularly if they're using clamshells, so you can just open it up and look at the toy and put it back. So, but these are only $25. I think I buried the lead in this review. These are $25. So that is $25. And maybe you think that's a lot of money. Have you collected toys lately? Even Megos are creeping up there now. They were $15, now they're like $18. And if you, depending on where you're buying, which ones you're buying, you could spend more than that. So, but most Mego type action figures like NECA, whatever, are a lot more money than $25. And custom toys, more like $125. They're much more money. So you're going to spend like $50 to $1.25 for a comparable toy from a custom toy maker. So $25, that's a good retail price. I think you're getting good value for $25. This is a well-made toy, very well made. It's very solid. It's obviously a factory-made toy. And I mean, they may have assembled it in the United States, but obviously the parts are factory made. But for $25, I don't think you can go wrong with this. Now, if it was $125, no, I wouldn't go there. But for $25, that's a good value. And I think part of the reason they were able to do it for $25 is because of the packaging, because it's so simple. Just put in this bag and staple this little card. So I wouldn't be surprised if the carded ones, when they come out, go up to, I don't know, 45 or 75. I don't know what they might do, but I bet they're not going to be 25. I bet that the price point had a lot to do with the packaging. So there's no, unlike a real bootleg toy, there's no hang tag right there. There should be like something like perforated that comes out and there's a little hole in it, or just a hole punched through it right here. That's what a real bootleg toy in a little dime store would have, a hole in it to hang it to a peg hook. So that's not quite authentic that they don't have that. Now all it really would take would be just a hole puncher right in there. Just design the artwork to make room for that. They don't have to have perforation and all that. But So that's a little not concern, but a little criticism. Now, another little criticism that there is a floppiness to some of the joints. And some, like his hips are really tight and stiff, but his waist isn't that tight. And his, like I said, his ankles, I'm concerned that his ankles won't really support the weight of the toy. And you kind of have to work with it, but I wouldn't stand him up and I wouldn't leave him like that. I think he'd fall over eventually. And it's not like a vintage Lincoln. You wouldn't just stand that up and walk away. There he goes. If you bend his back a little bit. So I'm not saying that he can't support himself. He can, but I wouldn't just stand him up like that and just leave him and think you'd come back the next day and he's still going to be standing. I'd say if you wanted to display him loose, a little doll stand or something would be appropriate. And really for any 8-inch figures, I don't know how many 8-inch Mego style figures are really reliable as far as standing on their own is concerned. So let's compare it again to the original. We never got a side-by-side view. And I don't know what the head is made of. It's not squishy. And I don't know if it's PVC or resin. I don't know. But it feels like plastic, but it's not. You can't squeeze it though. That Shock Monster, that's a resin head, as far as I know. It feels like resin, and when you tap it, it sounds like resin. That's a resin head. Of course, this vintage one, Vintage Wolfman, that's a squishy PVC head, a squishy rubbery head. Okay, so let's have them side by side. That's about as good as it's going to get because so no one is going to mistake this for an original. And I like that. They could have made it much more like the vintage one. They didn't. And I don't know that we're ever going to see anything that looks exactly like these again, just because the way they're made. You would have to start from scratch and make an entire body that snaps together like these old figures. And it would have to be lightweight. And a lot of plastic toys these days, they're not, in case you didn't notice, they're not lightweight. They have these are heavy. A lot of toys are heavy, and I think it's because there's something different about the way toys are made now than the way they were made back then. Toys back then were light. They were all lightweight. And now it seems like everything is very heavy. And I don't think it's because it's higher quality. I think it's different materials and different manufacturing methods. But these bodies are like, they're not blow molded, but they're like blow molded plastic. They have that kind of very lightweight consistency. Now, another thing I want to give a little editorial here. I've with these and the recent Super 7 A-High Creature figures, I see a lot of people online saying, Well, great, now I can get an AI creature without spending thousands of dollars. Now I can get a Lincoln Wolf-Man without spending thousands of dollars. And that's great if these toys help fill a spot in your collection, if they help fill a desire you have to if they make you feel good, that's all that matters. I want to I don't want to rain on anyone's parade. I want to just kind of caution you or try to impart, if I may be so arrogant, impart a little wisdom that I think collectors should recognize the difference between a vintage original toy and a remake. I think for their own good they should do that, not for my good or for anyone else's good. That they should take pleasure in what they have and not see it as a replacement for something they don't have. Because this isn't a Lincoln Wolfman. If you have this, that doesn't mean you've got this. They're not the same thing. This isn't this. And also, if you've got this and you don't have a plastic zombie figure, you don't have a plastic zombie Wolfman. If you have one of these, you don't have one of these. So if you want both, you got to buy them both. Having one doesn't mean you've got the other. And who knows, 20 years from now, maybe more people will want one of these. I don't know. So it's not about value. It's just they're not the same thing. And if you've got one, that doesn't mean you've got the other. So this is a really cool figure. A lot of its aesthetic power comes from its resemblance to something from the past. And so it has that nostalgic quality. But that's okay. That's a legitimate aesthetic technique to harken back to something, whether it's a song or a movie or some form of art. To be in the tradition of something that's come before is perfectly legitimate, and to try to harness some of that mojo from what happened, what went on, what came before in the past, and use it today is perfectly legitimate. But always remember, the past is the past, and the present is the present. And this is a very nice toy from 2021. It's not a 1970s toy. So it's got a strong novelty factor because it resembles something from the 70s. But I like that they have their own personality. It's a plastic zombie toy. It's not a Lincoln toy. It's plastic zombie Castaway Toys 2021. So I would celebrate it for that and not derive all of its value from its resemblance to something from the past. And with the Super 7 creatures, obviously, if you have a modern day toy this big, that doesn't mean you have a 1970s toy that's this big and it's made a completely different way. They're two completely different things. So it's cool to have something that's kind of like an avatar of something from the past, and something that reminds you of something from the past. It's like if you had a painting. Well, this is a reproduction. Okay, now I actually have this poster. I have the original poster. It's a French poster for Hammer's Curse of the Werewolf. So I have the real thing. I'm not going to hang it here to fade from the light and get scratched by my cat. But this is cool because I can abuse it. I can use it. I can watch it. I can look at it. I can use it for my YouTube show. I wouldn't do that with the original one. So it has its own value. In this case, the value is that I can use it, abuse it, enjoy it. and I don't have to have it under glass, you know, in a magnetic field with lasers surrounding it. But I can enjoy it, and I can enjoy this, and I can say, look, the waist is a little loose. I wouldn't I wouldn't do that with the vintage one. So I just want to point out that I like these tributes to these vintage toys, but I see people saying that because they have this, therefore they now have a Lincoln Wolfman. No, they're two different things. So just, you know, enjoy it as a tribute to something that carries on a tradition into the present day, that carries it forward and into the future, takes something that's kind of scarce and makes that aesthetic more widely available. So I just want to differentiate between, and I'm glad that they deliberately made these things look different from the originals. Now, one thing that bothers me a little bit is that the feet have 3 toes, whereas the Lincoln Wolfman has 5 toes. And I know why they did this, because all the toys in this line, they have different hands and different feet, but they I don't know if they're interchangeable, but they're trying to go for, I think, a Tomland aesthetic, where Tomland had a lot of weird hands and feet with different numbers of digits, and they didn't look like they really went with the figure that they were put on. So like their Toyman Wolfman has giant goofy hands, and I don't remember if it has giant feet or not. I think it does. But a lot of their Tomland figures they have weird hands and feet that look like they just had like a box of hands and feet and they just randomly stuck them on different figures. And I think that's kind of what they're going for, is that Tomland aesthetic. Like the hands have 3 fingers and and a thumb, so it has 4 fingers basically. So that's unusual. That's an aesthetic decision. I kind of understand what they're going for. They're going for a kind of cheesy, weird 70s vibe with that. Particularly Tomland is the one that really did that. I would rather seen... I can take 4 toes on a wolf figure because the actual Universal Wolfman I think has 4 claws visible from the front, and then I guess he must have another one kind of in the back, but there's 4 visible in the front. So I could take 4, but 3 is a little like an alien, like a Star Trek alien or something. So I would have rather had 5 fingers, 4 fingers and a thumb, 5 toes, but 4 would have been okay. 3 is a little too Star Raiders for me. That's like Tomland Star Raiders, which I think is what they're going for, kind of. That's a little too Star Raiders or Star Trek aliens or something like that. So that's one little thing, but like I said, it's a way that differentiates these from the original. And that's good. I'm glad they did that. I wonder if they would consider putting a rope around the waist just to make it a little more, add that extra vintage touch. Maybe the carded ones could have a little rope. That'd be kind of cool. What else can I say? I think I've talked a lot about these. Well, I like them. I think they're very well made. They harken back to the original just enough without being a reproduction. They're not reproductions. They're a new take on something from the past and bringing something from the past into the present. And I think it's a matter of class. I think doing that has class, and remaking it 100% does not have class. And I think Super 7 did it right as well, shrinking those A-high creatures down. I think that was the right way to do it. Some people are saying, well, let's make them 8 inches. Yeah, then it just gets cheesy. Then it's a fake then. Instead of a tribute, it becomes a fake. And I think this has integrity because it's different, and especially the glow one. But both of them, because it's a different take. And even if I might not quite like the number of digits on the toes of the fingers, I understand why they did that, and I can appreciate why they did that. So I think that has integrity, and I like that. I think the whole company it seems to me, I don't know a whole lot about it, but from what I do know, it seems like it has integrity. So that makes a difference where you put your money. You want to know that it's going into the pockets of someone that you don't mind lining their pockets. But I also think you could know a little too much about the people who make like the toys or the movies or you see or whatever. It's good to have a little bit of a distance there and not get too familiar. But generally, I think that it seems like a good company. It seems like good people. And, I don't mind giving them, I didn't pay for these, but in the future, I don't mind the idea of giving them my money. And I can feel good about having their products in my collection. And, I don't have any pangs of remorse or something about having their stuff in my collection. So what else would you want to know about this that I haven't said? I don't know, because I don't take stuff out of the package, so I can't. Maybe there's stuff about the articulation. Maybe you want me to take all the clothes off. I don't know. I think for what interests me, I think I've covered everything there is to cover. So if there's something I didn't go into and you're saying, why didn't he talk about this? Why didn't he talk about that? You can let me know in the comments. And, they're not going away, so I could answer your question as long as it doesn't require destroying the toy. I'm not going to pull the limbs off or anything like that. But if you got other questions, let me know and I'll try to answer them. So I think I covered all the ground I wanted to cover. That's it. Not forgetting anything. Just taking one more look around. I showed you all the stuff I wanted to show you. I think I talked about everything there's to talk about. I'll take a picture of him glowing. I'll put it at the end of the show. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much for watching. I know I haven't had a proper new episode in a while. We did the toy show one, and I've gotten a very good response to that, so I appreciate that. Thank you for watching and commenting on the toy show episode. After Halloween, that's kind of a hectic time for me, so I always take a little break after that. But this year, there always seems to be some health issue kind of spoiling my Halloween. Usually it's me. A couple years ago, I had a health issue and my late cat, Stinker, had a health issue. This time, my cat, Billy, has had health issues. I said before he has asthma. So he took some steroids to treat the asthma, and the steroids gave him pancreatitis. So for 4 weeks, he's been dealing with pancreatitis, which means I've been dealing with it, and that's been stressing me out like crazy. So he's had all kinds of tests and blood tests and imaging, and I've probably spent a couple of $1,000s on that cat in recent weeks. So, but he's worth it. But I don't have the income for that. But I got to do it. I want him to get better, And he's not quite better yet. His last blood test, measuring his, I don't know what it shows if there's inflammation in the pancreas. His levels were in the normal range. But I can tell he's still not quite 100%. So I'm hoping in the next week or two, he finally gets past all this. And boy, I'll never give him those steroids again. I mean, it helped his asthma. He hasn't coughed in a couple of months. He was coughing. He hasn't coughed in a couple of months. We took care of that. But it gave him a worse problem that is a little scarier, and it's been very stressful. So that's another reason I haven't done a whole lot of video work lately. My mind's not there. My mind's not on there. My mind's on my cat. So anyone who's watched this show for a while knows how much I love my cats. So, and when I lost Stinker last year, people who have been with me for a while, you know how big a deal that was. So Billy is only a year and a half old. I want him to live to be an old cat. So hopefully that will happen. So that's part of why I haven't been, you haven't seen complete new episodes in a while. But here's one. I hope you like it. And I will have more new episodes very soon. I have several planned. And I hope I can get out of this basement again. In the toy show video, you saw Andy Williams and Tom Stockman. It would be great to go to their homes and visit them and see their collection. I think with Tom, I'll probably wait until he's in the process of buying a new house. So I might wait till he gets his new house and settles in to his new home. But I mean, I've talked with Andy in the past about going to his house and doing something. So it would be nice to do that. And my friend Matt in the Chicago area, I've talked with him over the past couple of years about maybe doing something there. He's got a fantastic, mind-blowing collection. He's got a room where everything's displayed. And, well, I don't know. I haven't been to his current house. I've only been to his previous house where he had a beautiful collection room. I'm sure he has a great collection room now, but I haven't seen it in person. And there are other collectors I know. So it would be nice to go to some of these collectors over the next year and get out of the basement and see some of these collections and do an episode profiling them and their collection. So that's something I'd like to do. But that won't happen in the next few weeks. That'll happen, hopefully, maybe if it happens in the future. Okay, I guess that's it. I hope you liked this episode. I hope I did these toys justice. I like them quite a bit. They're very, very nice. I had a few concerns about a little this and that, but I would recommend if you want this kind of a toy, you really can't go wrong. They'll fit in with Migos or NECAs. They'll fit in with custom stuff like Brent's dolls or Brent's toys? I think Brent's dolls, or Alexander's toys, or distinctive dummies. They'll fit in with that. So whether it's the manufactured stuff or the custom stuff, they kind of fit comfortably in the middle, and they'll go right along with either genre. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and thank you, Castaway Toys, for providing these samples for review. I appreciate it. Thank you very much, and thank you, David Lee, for giving me that excellent interview at the Toyman Toy Show. So until next time, Basement of Horror will return.